The stars stretched endlessly beyond the viewport, cold and silent. Commander Elias Carter stood on the bridge of the Vanguard, his arms crossed, his jaw clenched. Around him, the crew whispered in frustration. The ship they had been given was a joke. No, worse than a joke. It was an insult. The Zorvath Empire, one of the most powerful alien factions in the galaxy, had gifted humanity this vessel as a sign of goodwill. But Elias knew better. This was no gift. It was a death sentence. The Vanguard was an ancient warship, rusted and barely functional. The engines sputtered like a dying beast, the weapons were outdated, and the shields flickered as if they could collapse at any moment. The hull had scorch marks, evidence of past battles long forgotten. It was clear this ship had been discarded, thrown away like trash. Lieutenant Mira Lawson, the ship's chief engineer, stormed onto the bridge, her face twisted in anger. "Commander, I've checked the systems again. The main power core is unstable. The cooling system is almost non-existent. If we push the engines too hard, we'll explode before we even get into battle." Elias sighed. "And the weapons?" Mira shook her head. "The targeting systems are fried, and half the turrets don't even turn. We might as well throw rocks at our enemies." The crew exchanged nervous glances. They had all heard the rumors. The Zorvath Empire was not known for generosity. If they had given humans a warship, there had to be a catch. Suddenly, the ship's comms crackled to life. A transmission came through, an encrypted message. Elias pressed a button, and a hologram flickered into view. It was Admiral Kizrak, a high-ranking officer of the Zorvath. His reptilian face twisted into something resembling a grin. "Commander Carter," the alien's voice was smooth, almost mocking. "I trust you are enjoying our gift." Elias's fingers curled into a fist. "You gave us a ship that barely works. What are you playing at, Admiral?" Kizrak chuckled. "Oh, but it is a gift, human. A chance to prove your worth. Of course, if you fail, well, that will only confirm what we suspected about your species." The transmission ended. Silence filled the bridge. Mira exhaled sharply. "They're testing us. They expect us to die out here." Elias turned to his crew, his expression unreadable. "Then we'll prove them wrong." A spark of determination ignited in the room. They had been given a broken, dying ship, but that didn't mean they were helpless. "Get me a full diagnostic of every system," Elias ordered. "I want to know what still works, what can be repaired, and what we can use to our advantage. If the Zorvath think they've sent us to our deaths, they're in for a surprise." The crew snapped into action. Hope was a dangerous thing, but it was better than despair. The Vanguard might have been a doomed gift, but Elias wasn't ready to let it die just yet. The Vanguard groaned like a dying beast as it drifted through space. Sparks flickered from loose wires, and the dim emergency lights barely kept the corridors from sinking into darkness. The ship was in ruins, but Elias Carter wasn't ready to give up. Not yet. In the engine room, Lieutenant Mira Lawson wiped sweat from her forehead. The air smelled of burnt circuits and leaking coolant. She crouched beside a panel, her hands deep inside the wiring, searching for anything useful. Next to her, Ensign David Cho scanned the ship's blueprint on his datavat. "This thing shouldn't even be flying," David muttered. "The fusion core is decades old, the thrusters are misaligned, and the power grid is running at 20% capacity." Mira frowned. "Yeah, but there's something weird about it. I was going through the ship's subsystems, and I found encrypted data buried deep in the mainframe, almost like someone tried to hide it." David's eyes widened. "Hidden data? From who?" Mira shrugged. "That's what I'm trying to figure out. But whatever it is, it's old, older than the Zorvath Empire itself." A cold shiver ran down David's spine. "You think they knew about this?" Before Mira could answer, Elias's voice came through the intercom. "All senior crew to the war room." Now, the war room was small and barely operational. A flickering holographic display showed a three-dimensional model of the Vanguard. Around the table, Elias, Mira, David, and weapons officer Sergeant Holt studied the ship's diagnostics. Elias's face was unreadable. "Tell me what we have." Mira exhaled and pointed at the hologram. "On the surface, it looks like an old, broken warship, but deep in the ship's code, I found something buried. A secondary system that isn't supposed to exist." She tapped a button, and new data lines appeared on the display. Strange symbols scrolled across the screen, written in a language none of them recognized. David leaned closer. "That doesn't look like Zorvath tech." "It's not," Mira confirmed. "This ship wasn't just abandoned, it was erased. Someone tried to wipe its history clean, but they didn't do a good enough job." Elias folded his arms. "If the Zorvath gave us this ship expecting us to die in it, they wouldn't have bothered wiping its past. That means someone else, someone before them, wanted to keep this ship's true identity a secret." Sergeant Holt, the oldest and most experienced among them, narrowed his eyes. "Commander, we don't know what we're dealing with. This ship might have a past we're better off not digging into." Elias let his gaze sweep over the team. "Maybe. But if there's something hidden inside this wreck that can help us survive, we need to find it." Mira hesitated before speaking. "There's more." She pressed another button, and the hologram changed. "I think I found an inactive system buried in the ship's hardware. A weapons system." The air in the room went still. Holt grunted. "What kind of weapon?" Mira looked at the data, then back at Elias. "I don't know yet, but if we can get it online, it might just turn this death trap into a real war machine." Elias's lips curled into a slow, determined grin. "Then let's wake it up." The Vanguard hummed with an eerie energy as Mira worked tirelessly in the ship's core systems. Wires dangled from open panels, and dim emergency lights flickered overhead. The deeper she dove into the ship's hidden data, the more she felt like they were uncovering something that wasn't meant to be found. David stood beside her, monitoring the data stream on his screen. "This encryption isn't Zorvath, and it sure as hell isn't human. It's ancient." Mira didn't look up. Whatever this system is, it was locked away for a reason. Her fingers danced over the console, bypassing security protocols with careful precision. Finally, with one last command, a deep mechanical voice echoed through the ship. "Primary weapon systems, initializing." Mira's breath caught in her throat. David took a cautious step back. "That's new." Before Mira could respond, the entire ship trembled. In the war room, Elias Carter and Sergeant Holt felt the vibrations beneath their boots. Warning lights flared across every screen. Elias's voice came through the comms. "Mira, what the hell is happening?" She frantically scanned the displays. I think we just woke something up." In the war room, Elias and Holt stared at the flickering holographic display of the Vanguard. New sections of the ship were lighting up, ones that weren't there before. Holt squinted. Those compartments, they were completely inactive. Now they're showing as fully operational. Elias's jaw tightened. And what exactly is inside them? The answer came before anyone could speak. A deep, guttural hum resonated through the ship, like a sleeping beast stirring from slumber. Then, without warning, a new schematic appeared on the holo display. A weapon. But not just any weapon. Mira's voice cracked through the speakers. "Commander, you need to see this." Elias and Holt rushed into the engineering bay, where Mira and David stood frozen, staring at a large screen. A new system had been unlocked, one unlike anything they had ever seen. Strange, shifting symbols moved across the screen, accompanied by a blueprint of a weapon embedded within the Vanguard's hull. Elias's eyes narrowed. That doesn't look like human tech. Mira swallowed hard. That's because it's not. David's voice was barely above a whisper. "Commander, this ship is carrying something far beyond what the Zorvath, or anyone, has ever used in battle. This thing, it's a planetary-class weapon. Holt let out a low whistle. A planet killer. Mira shook her head. Not exactly. It's more precise. Instead of wiping out entire planets, this thing can target fleets, stations, even entire moons, and obliterate them in seconds. And it's powered by something we don't understand. Elias clenched his fists. So the Zorvath handed us a death trap. But they had no idea it was actually a doomsday weapon. Mira turned to face him, a mixture of excitement and fear in her eyes. If we can get it online, we won't just have a fighting chance. We'll have the most powerful ship in the galaxy. Elias's lips curled into a slow, dangerous smile. Then let's make sure it works. The Vanguard hung in the darkness of space, its once battered hull now humming with energy. For the first time since its awakening, the ship felt alive. Deep within its core, systems that had been dormant for centuries were now surging with power. Commander Elias Carter stood on the bridge, eyes locked on the holographic display. A nearby asteroid field stretched before them. An uninhabited graveyard of rock and debris. It was the perfect place to test their newfound weapon. Sergeant Holt adjusted his earpiece. Mira, is that thing online yet? In engineering, Mira wiped sweat from her brow, hands flying over the control panel. Almost there. This weapon's power source is different. It doesn't just fire energy, it manipulates it. David frowned. Meaning? She exhaled sharply. Meaning I have no idea how destructive this thing really is until we pull the trigger. Elias's voice crackled over the comms. Then let's find out. Mira hesitated for only a moment before pressing the final sequence. A deep, resonating hum filled the ship. Every console flickered, and an unseen force rippled through the hull. Outside, the space before them warped, as if the very fabric of reality was bending to the weapon's will. Target locked, David reported, his voice steady despite the weight of the moment. Holt clenched his fists. Fire. From the belly of the Vanguard, a pulse of light erupted, silent, focused, and impossibly fast. It struck the largest asteroid dead center. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, the asteroid imploded. Not shattered, not exploded, imploded. It collapsed inward, as if crushed by an invisible force, then vanished in a ripple of energy. The shockwave sent smaller asteroids tumbling, but there was no traditional explosion, just silence, and the eerie absence where a massive asteroid had once been. The bridge was deathly quiet. Holt finally exhaled. Holy, that wasn't just a blast. That thing erased it from existence. Mira's fingers trembled as she scanned the data. It's not energy-based. It's something else. Something ancient. David swallowed hard. The Zorvath had no idea what they handed us. Elias leaned forward, eyes burning with determination. Then let's make sure they find out. The Vanguard drifted silently in the void, hidden within the shadows of a dying star. Every system was primed, every crew member on edge. The Zorvath had no idea what was waiting for them. Commander Elias Carter stood on the bridge, watching the sensor display. They had intercepted a Zorvath transmission. One of their patrol ships was heading straight for their position. It was time to see if the Vanguard was truly ready for war. Sergeant Holt paced near the weapons console. One patrol ship isn't much of a challenge. The real problem is what happens after we take it down. David, manning the tactical station, nodded. They'll send reinforcements. Fast. Elias smirked. That's exactly what we want. Minutes later, the Zorvath warship emerged from hyperspace, a sleek, menacing vessel armed to the teeth. It slowed, scanning the area. They're looking for us, Mira whispered from engineering. Elias gave a slight nod. Let them. The Vanguard remained motionless, its new cloaking field keeping it invisible to enemy sensors. The Zorvath captain, confident in his superiority, moved closer. Holt's fingers twitched over the weapon's control. Say the word, Commander. Elias waited, then. Fire. A single pulse shot from the Vanguard's experimental weapon. Unlike traditional energy blasts, this one didn't explode on impact. Instead, it pulled. The Zorvath ship buckled as invisible forces gripped it. The crew barely had time to scream before their ship crumpled inward, crushed into nothingness. Then, silence. David exhaled. Damn. Mira's voice was shaky. That thing, it doesn't just destroy. It erases. Elias turned toward the crew, his expression cold and determined. And now the Zorvath know we're here. Holt grinned. Let's make them regret it. The destruction of their patrol ship had exactly the effect the humans expected. Within hours, the Zorvath fleet was mobilizing. Dozens of warships moved toward the coordinates of their fallen vessel, hungry for revenge. Commander Elias Carter stood on the bridge of the Vanguard, watching the enemy response on the holo display. The Zorvath believed they were hunting down a weak, stranded ship. They had no idea they were walking into a trap. They're coming in fast, David reported from the tactical station. Looks like 3 battle cruisers leading a full assault squad. Sergeant Holt cracked his knuckles. That's a lot of firepower. Are we sure we can take them? Elias smirked. We don't take them, Sergeant. We lure them. The battlefield is set. The Vanguard remained motionless, floating like wreckage near a field of asteroid debris. Its new cloaking systems masked its energy signature, making it appear as nothing more than dead metal in space. The Zorvath fleet arrived, scanning aggressively. Their lead ship, a massive dreadnought named Krythos, sent out a transmission. Human vessel, we know you are here. You cannot hide. Surrender now, and your deaths will be swift. Mira scoffed from engineering. They always think they're in control. Elias leaned forward. Not this time. The trap is sprung. The Vanguard activated its systems in an instant, its advanced thrusters bursting to life. Before the Zorvath could react, the ship moved, not in the slow, sluggish way of outdated human vessels, but with terrifying speed and precision. Holt launched the first strike. The Vanguard's main cannon fired a concentrated energy burst, aimed not at the enemy ships, but at a massive asteroid above them. The explosion sent thousands of tons of rock debris hurtling toward the Zorvath fleet. Panic erupted. The Zorvath warships scrambled, breaking formation to avoid the incoming barrage. Some managed to evade, but 2 of their smaller vessels weren't fast enough. The asteroid shards ripped through them, tearing their hulls apart in an instant. 2 down, David announced, eyes locked on the display. Elias gave the next order. Now we hunt. The Vanguard weaved through the chaos, targeting another cruiser. Before the enemy could react, Holt launched a torpedo barrage straight into its exposed engines. The ship exploded in a brilliant fireball, sending more debris scattering across the battlefield. The Zorvath dreadnought, Krythos, was the last to recover. They're locking onto us, Mira warned. Elias's smirk never wavered. Good. The final move. The Krythos unleashed a devastating plasma barrage, but the Vanguard was already gone, darting through the wreckage like a ghost. The humans had turned their so-called scrap ship into a technological nightmare, one the Zorvath had no answer for. Elias pointed at the screen. Holt, fire the main weapon. A deep hum resonated through the ship as the Vanguard's experimental cannon charged. A second later, a pulse of dark energy erupted from the hull, striking the Krythos head-on. The dreadnought's shields flared, then failed. A gaping hole tore through its side as the energy pulse ripped through it. Within moments, the flagship of the Zorvath fleet was no more, reduced to nothing but shattered debris. Silence filled the bridge. Then, Mira whispered, "We just destroyed their most powerful ship." Elias exhaled. And now the entire galaxy will know what humanity is capable of. The battlefield was silent. The Zorvath fleet was gone, destroyed, scattered, or fleeing into the void. The Vanguard, once dismissed as useless junk, now floated victorious, its hull still gleaming under the distant stars. But Commander Elias Carter knew this wasn't the end. It was just the beginning. Mira's voice broke the silence. "Commander, we're receiving transmissions from multiple sectors. The entire Zorveth Dominion just witnessed what we did." David turned from his console, eyes wide. "They're not just retreating. They're running. Their outer colonies are going dark. They fear us." Elias leaned back in his chair. "Good. The message to the galaxy." He stood up and walked toward the main console, opening a direct broadcast channel. This message wasn't just for the Zorveth. It was for everyone. "This is Commander Elias Carter of the Human Warship Vanguard," he said, his voice calm but unwavering. "You gave us a broken ship, a floating coffin meant for failure. And we turned it into the deadliest weapon in the galaxy." He let those words sink in. "To the Zorveth Dominion, you thought humanity was weak. You thought we would accept defeat. You were wrong." His gaze hardened. "Now the galaxy will remember our name. We will not be forgotten. And if you ever dare to challenge us again." He paused, then delivered the final words like a death sentence. "We will end you." With that, he ended the transmission. The aftermath. The bridge was quiet as the weight of their victory settled in. Mira let out a low whistle. "Well, if they weren't afraid before, they sure as hell are now." Holt chuckled. "We just turned their strongest empire into cowards." David looked at the holographic map, watching as more Zorveth signals flickered and disappeared. "What now, Commander?" Elias exhaled, staring out at the vastness of space. Their war had begun, but this wasn't just about survival anymore. This was about power. He turned to his crew. "Now," he smirked, "now we show the universe what humanity is truly capable of." The Vanguard turned, its engines roaring as it vanished into the stars, carrying the legend of humanity with it.